You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Hello from Mamma Mia. This is the No Filter podcast. I'm Mia Friedman, and this is a bonus episode of the show. You're going to hear an interview today, but I will not be the one asking the questions. The wonderful Libby Trickett, Olympic gold medalist and co-host of our This Glorious Mess podcast, one of Mamma Mia's parenting shows, will be hosting some bonus No Filter episodes over the next 3 Thursdays. I'm not going to give anything away, but she has landed some absolutely extraordinary Australian athletes with some great stories to tell. Here's Libby in this special bonus episode.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Libby Trickett and you're listening to No Filter. We've got a special few interviews over the next few weeks in the lead up to the Paris Olympics and Paralympics. You'll still get your usual Monday No Filter interview with Mia Friedman, of course, but you'll also get extra exclusive interviews with some of Australia's most inspiring athletes with incredible stories that I just need to share with you. Today's guest is one of the most impressive people I have ever met. Vanessa Low is 33, she's a sprinter and long jumper, and she's about to compete in the Paris Paralympics for Australia.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Low. I'm a Paralympic gold medalist and mum to be. At the age of 15, I stumbled across an incoming train, so I got struck by the train and spent about 6 months in hospital, a couple of weeks in coma, and I was actually really fortunate just to walk away with missing both of my legs. I'm still sitting here, still living a really good life. I think going through my accident was really something that turned into one of my biggest opportunities.
She suffered multiple broken bones, head and back injuries, and spent the next 6 months in hospital. By the time she left, her muscles had wasted away and she weighed just 45 kilograms. A couple of years later, she was competing at the world stage in 2012 in London. She represented Germany at the Paralympics twice before she began representing Australia at the Paralympics in 2019. She's a Paralympic gold and silver medalist, 6-time world championship medalist, and is the reigning world record holder in the women's long jump in the category T61.
Sitting in the lead, 1 jump to go, already jumped 5:20, improved the world record twice. What about a 3rd time, just for fun? Oh, she's hit the board very well.
Vanessa's immense heart and her story are truly remarkable. The way she explains why she does things and how she got to where she is beyond words. Something else you need to know about Vanessa before you listen to our conversation is that her partner, Scott Reardon, is also her coach. So the dynamic there is very interesting. Scott is a Paralympic gold medalist, sprinter and water skier, and not quite 2 years ago they achieved their finest achievement, their first baby together, and his name is Matteo. I loved talking to Vanessa about not just her personal successes in sport, but about her perspective on life. Here's Vanessa Low. All right, well, Vanessa, I'm so excited to chat to you. I think since I started following your journey, I continue to take things from the way that you talk about life and particularly around adversity and your ability to not only face the life changes that you have particularly been through, but we've all been through life changes, right? Some bigger than others, but you're able to navigate it in a way that is just so powerful in a really beautiful way. I guess I kind of wanted to start with, how did you develop that? Like, was that something that you had before your accident when you were 15, or is that something that's come through that experience for you?
I think it's a bit of both. I think growing up, I was always a very stubborn person and a stubborn teenager, and that actually really helps when adversity hits. So although my parents were really cursing, the stubbornness that I grew up with having, I think it really came in handy when things got hard, and I had these really big goals in my mind to adapt my life in a way that allowed me to live the life to my fullest after the challenges I faced. But also, I think this is something that we can learn, and we can all learn to find a way to not only like conquer our challenges, but actually manage them in a way that opens up opportunities for us. And I think that's how I started to really see my unique challenges, especially when I got hit with that accident where I lost my legs, that there was no such thing as overcoming that adversity. And I think it didn't take me very long to realize that. And I think so many people over the years are continuously asking me how I managed to overcome the adversity, but that's really missing the point, because I never tried to overcome it because I knew that was not possible. But I think what I really learned through the accident is that some things just happen and life just changes. And rather than just trying to return back to how life was before something hit, or return back to the body that I had or the life that I had, why not open up myself to these challenges and try to find my unique opportunities in that? And that really opened up for me the world of sport. And to be completely honest, I never would have ended up at the Olympics. I loved sport and I loved playing all sorts of sports, but I was not the person that was at that point was going to go to be a professional athlete, let alone going to the Olympics. And when that accident hit, my perspective really shifted. And rather than just like using sport as a way of exercising and spending time with my friends, all of a sudden it became a tool to really find out what I'm capable of and what this new body of mine is capable of. And so it was really kind of a vehicle to the new self. And yeah, so in a way, my biggest adversity ended up being my biggest opportunity, because it opened up a new world. And I think this is how I still deal with adversity. I always search for not necessarily a silver lining, but for the differences that create new opportunities, and all the challenges and whatnot is whatever's coming my way. I really look for the things that they can bring to this new life and the life moving forward.
I love that idea around change and adversity, because I've been doing a lot of reading and understanding around change and like what that looks like and how much we as humans try and resist it. Like so much, like we're all control freaks, I think, to some extent, some worse than others. And I'm right up there as being one of the worst. But you have this idea of how you want things to be and how your life is going to pan out. What's it like, when at a challenging age, I mean, being a 15-year-old young woman is really difficult anyway, and then to be out of nowhere, literally struck by a train, how do you navigate that when it's such an important juncture in your life?
I think for me, I really try to step back into the shoes almost of a child. Like when I look at my little bub and he's like conquering all the challenges that he goes through every single day. I mean, like he's literally grows 2 inches overnight, and like all of a sudden where he used to fit through, all of a sudden he's now hitting his head on. But like I really try to do just like whatever is ahead of me, one thing at a time, rather than getting so overwhelmed by the change and the challenges that come with it. I actually really try to focus on the one thing that's right in front of me first, and then really think about the long-term solutions or the long-term goals and kind of like the ways that I want to conquer it. So really breaking it down to like really small digestible bits and being a little bit more lighthearted about it, rather than just being so overwhelmed by, how am I going to live a life this way? How am I ever going to adapt in a way that allows me to live the same life quality? Because that's all what we want. We want the life quality that we picture for ourselves. Like we have something in our head how our life is supposed to look like. And so it's not necessarily the change that is challenging. It's like the lack of life quality that comes with the change that we feel like we will have. And so rather than getting so stuck in the idea that this life quality is changing because my mobility was changing and my independence was changing and my body image obviously struggled for a long while as well, I think I really started to focus on the one thing that was the most urgent on the day. And then all of a sudden, like I really started chipping away on it. And all the really big challenges, that was mobility, that was returning back to school because I did not want to use my wheelchair. I wanted to use my prosthetic legs, and that was much harder than I anticipated it being. But I made one goal of, walking down the hallway 10 times that day. And then the next day I had the challenge to do that 12 times. And then 1 week down the road, I wanted to do, the 2 stories up and down the house. And like adding all these little challenges day by day, all of a sudden 1 year down the track, I was going to school without using my wheelchair. And so what I felt like was the hardest thing in the whole world, if I would have looked at the ultimate goal and the way that I still had ahead of me, all of a sudden it was really quite doable. And I think we do that really well when we're kids. Like we do one thing at a time, one thing that seems the most urgent, something that we want to figure out today. And if we keep doing that every single day, all of a sudden we're halfway there.
I love that. I mean, you're exactly right. If we just break it down, it's so much easier to digest. I want to come back to that idea around body image though as well, because, you know, when you are 15, you have a body and then all of a sudden you're going through puberty and you might be getting breasts or thighs or whatever. And so many women have this idea that we don't. Well, I certainly didn't want to stick out from the crowd because I was very muscular as a kid and that comes with certain connotations and all of that sort of stuff. What was it like to go through that moment and have this massive body change? Did you feel it in that moment that you were different?
I really did. And I think I felt it for a lot longer than I initially thought I did. I think it took me probably 5-6 years to really overcome that almost like lack of appreciation of the new body that I had. And for a long while, when I first had these goals of returning back to like the mobility and to really all the functional bits that allowed me to live the life that I wanted, I think I really neglected the fact that although I could do all these things, I was always going to walk a little bit differently. I was never going to wear these 10-inch heels ever. I was never, ever going to fit into a crowd because when you have two prosthetic legs, you naturally stand out. You can't wear any skirts or shorts or open shoes without being looked at. And I think for a long while, I tried to really make up for that fact in putting on prosthetics that had a full like cosmetic cover around them, kind of make them look like human legs. And I wore long pants, but I couldn't wear any skinny jeans because I couldn't fit my feet through. So I couldn't really wear the clothes that I wanted to wear. And I couldn't wear the stuff that the other kids or the other teenagers were wearing that stage. So even though I could hide them as good as possible, I was still going to stand out because I couldn't wear what I wanted to. And I think it wasn't until I was really involved in sport and when I got introduced into running legs, which are, I'm not sure if you've seen them, but they're like black, they're made of carbon fiber.
They're amazing.
Not like human legs because they're not mimicking human legs. They actually are made after the fastest thing that runs. So they're actually designed after cheetahs. And so that's why the shape is coming from. And I really started to appreciate that rather than returning back to something, you know, that you can't replace. Our human legs, they designed them after something that's even faster than that. So I think that's how I really appreciated or started to appreciate that it is really not about returning back to what I had lost and trying to replace it because it simply cannot be replaced ever. And I think that's when I really started to embrace it and realize I can actually create whatever it is that I want to create in that space and not come from a place of loss, but actually come from a place of empowerment. And so I think that was the moment where I took off all these cosmetics and all these bits that are trying to make my looks like human legs and like the legs that I had lost, but I actually really put on like colorful covers and I really decided to let them stand out and actually gave them the meaning that they deserve because they were never meant to be a tool to return back to the life that I had before, but they were really a tool to be the person that I was now and that I'm capable of being in the future.
Do you feel like there's some synergies with that? Because you've recently, well, almost 2 years ago now, but you gave birth to Matteo. Do you feel like through that experience and that embracing of change of your body, you've been able to navigate pregnancy and the postpartum period? And obviously your body will never return to what it was before having a baby. And I think as a society, we're so obsessed with bouncing back and, you know, returning to our pre-baby bodies, which is just not possible, right? Do you feel like you were able to navigate that change in your body and embrace it in a way that you may not have done otherwise?
I think so. I think looking back over the last couple of years, I mean, obviously I had some goals to lose a couple of the kilos that I had gained through pregnancy because I'm still in sport and to some extent like healthy nutrition and moving is part of my job. So naturally I was going to chop some of these kilos off. But I think the major bit was that I had lost a big part of my mobility in the back end of pregnancy. because I couldn't fit into my legs anymore. I had so much swelling and I gained a bit of weight. And I really started to realize how big of a quality life I was living because how fit I was. And so that was the goal. And I wanted to return back to the fitness that I had and the ability to have all the movement that I wanted and that was capable before pregnancy. And when I dove back into the world of sport and tried to return back to that mobility, all of a sudden I had people like talk to me like, well, you don't look like you just had a baby. It's like, how does a person look like that just had a baby?
How are you supposed to look?
I actually don't know what that was supposed to mean. Does it mean I don't look like a mom? Because I very much feel like a mom and I very much don't feel like an athlete at the present moment. I just feel someone that is trying to live life again with having had birth. I just wanted to return back to not the person that I was before because that person was gone after I gave birth. There was a new birth that was born at that point, and that wasn't Matteo necessarily. That was me as well. But I was also really excited to return back to the mobility that I had. And so I think a lot of people didn't think that I was trying so hard and training so hard to chop off these kilos and be in the same body, in the same shape I was before, because I knew that was not a realistic goal and not something that was all that important to me. But what I really missed in the back end of pregnancy was the ability to move and move to the extent that I wanted it to. So that was my big goal. And I think it was definitely a different world navigating these expectations of being a mom and being an athlete. And, you know, in the whole athletics world, like, I guess there's certain body images that surround athletes and how you're supposed to look like an athlete. But then there's also certain images and certain expectations around being a mom. And all of a sudden I felt like there was a massive gap in between the two. And it was really difficult to actually find my own sweet spot in the middle there where I felt like me, the athlete and mom at the same time.
Because this is your first Paralympics as a mother. What does that feel like? Because like from my little brain, like to think about what was required to get to that level of elite performance, right? Like to know all the choices that you have to make to commit to putting your body through it, all of those sorts of things. And, you know, in a lot of ways it can become very selfish and, you know, you're very focused on what you're trying to achieve. What's it like now at your fourth Paralympics, your second as an Australian and your first as a mother? What's it like preparing? Like, is it different in any way? I mean, I imagine it's wildly different, but tell me how it's different.
It's so wildly different. It's so amazing that I feel like I'm still doing the same sport, still do the same thing that I fell in love with 16 years ago. Yet it feels very different and there's a different perspective added to the whole journey. And I think perspective is the one thing that stands out when I think about my journey of pregnancy and then returning back to life is the perspective change and the way that I look at life and the way that I look at the things that I do and how much of a different why you have every single day. I mean, I don't get up every single day just to be the best athlete I can be. All of a sudden I get up because I want to be the best person I can be first, so I can be a good mom and I can be a good athlete. And so I think that's why I'm going to be a better athlete this year because I'm not just having the athlete mindset, but I'm actually really embracing the wholeness as a person and all the aspects that make me me, which then allows me to be the person and the athlete that I can be. And having Matteo on this journey with me is so rewarding and so challenging at the same time. I think juggle is probably the word. But at the same time, you let go of all these expectations of being perfect because I realized even without a child, I never had the perfect preparation for games ever. I mean, I've done 3 games before and I mean, one was a COVID detour in there. One was a stress fracture in my back. Then the other one had other challenges. So there's always something going on. So I realized that you don't have to have a perfect preparation in order to enjoy the games and be the best athlete. And so really embracing that this is going to be a journey of nothing is going to go perfect. There's going to be a lot of hiccups of things that I can't control, especially when it comes to Matteo, because they always get sick when it's the least convenient. They always going to have the worst night possible, the night before competition. And I just expect that. I expect that it's not going to go my way. but I'm going to embrace all the little aspects that make this journey really unique. And I'm going to remember this as probably a games that was our family games. And I think that's what makes it really special.
One of my favorite things is like to look at life is just lower your expectations, and anything is like just a wonderful gift, basically. It must be absolutely next level with having a little one on this journey. But not only, I mean, you mentioned it's a family games for you, but you and your partner, Scott, who is also a Paralympic gold medalist, by the way, and your coach, like you guys are a bunch of overachievers, and that's okay. We still love you. Like you had this incredible experience in Tokyo, getting to share that. That was your first Paralympics as an Australian. Were you husband and wife by that stage?
Yeah, we were.
So you got to experience, I mean, what would have been just an insanely different Paralympic Games in any circumstances. That is just so incredibly different. But this is the first one as a family. How do you navigate, for one, I mean, having your partner as your coach is such an interesting dynamic, but it's obviously working for you guys. So how do you navigate that? Who looks after Matteo when you're training and competing?
It's ever changing, and it's so interesting because, like we said before, you make plans and then it constantly changes because the baby changes, and then it's all of a sudden a toddler, and everything that used to be easy is now hard, and everything that used to be hard is now easy. But I think our relationship was really founded on friendship because we had a long-term relationship for a fair while. It was, in the end, I think 3 years. And so we really used to having this big trust and this big base of friendship so that anything that we do together is so much easier because the foundation was already there. And then when we came from having that big distance relationship to then moving in with him, training together, living together, and doing basically 24/7 together, it really changed and it really became our superpower because we actually make each other better. And we're actually one of these people that really enjoy spending every minute together. And so when we decided to give this journey a go, as him as a coach and I as an athlete, we knew that we could lean onto the friendship and trust when things are going to get hard. And we knew and we expected it to get hard at some time because there's always going to be differences and we're always going to disagree at some point. And so we really anchor back into that big base that we built. And so it really works. And I'm actually really excited for these games because it felt so, it's my heartfelt games. I almost call it like the one that I feel the deepest in my heart, the preparation that almost meant the most to me because it was so challenging in some aspects coming back from pregnancy and birth. And then also having my husband and my life partner, I guess, by my side every step of the journey. It's so great. And we decided to really enjoy parenthood in a way that we wanted to be there every second of it. And we also realized if he was going to go to daycare, I was probably not going to go to Paris because we're probably going to all be sick for the first year or so. Yes. So we decided to actually stay away from that, and we incorporated Matteo into this athletics journey. And there's some big learning curves along there. So some things we thought was going to be easy definitely didn't work out, but we found a really good system that works for us, and we found our perfect groove now and realized which sessions he's able to come to, and he's an enhancement of the session and the day. And other sessions, we actually found one of the volleyball girls that trains around the IS is helping nannying for us. So we found a really great combination of having another athlete look after him for a few hours here and there, and the rest of the time is really just part of the journey. And with all the ups and downs and the screaming while I'm competing, we've done it all. So I feel like now 2 years into this journey, we kind of found our groove.
You're prepared for anything in Paris.
Last year's nationals, I was literally like at the track, and the entire 45 minutes of competing, he was screaming murder. And like probably everyone was looking around and was, who brought that screaming baby to the track? It's like,
that is my child. The joys, they just never run to any sort of system, do they? They just don't. And yet they enhance everything. Yeah, it's awesome.
They really do. It brings the human back to the athletic factor.
I'm interested in how your experience in London in 2012. So that was your first Paralympic Games. And it was in that moment that you didn't perform at the level that you wanted to. And you've spoken about how actually after London, you decided to retire from sport, from elite sport. And through some friends, you ended up moving to America and rejoined the athletic community. I'm so interested to understand, because I know from my experiences how intense that desire is to win, and how the focus and the intensity and how crushing it can be when those events don't eventuate as you hoped them to be. What was that experience like for you? And then how did you kind of come to what is your beautiful perspective of enjoying every moment as it comes and allowing the performance to come through you?
It's been such an interesting journey, because I think this was probably the biggest loss that I went through. I think everyone sees me on prosthetics and things. That was the hardest bit.
Why was it the hardest bit?
I think that one went straight to my heart. I think, while the loss of my legs was a physical one, the loss of actually achieving my goal and be successful in the sport was something that I chose to do, something I poured everything into. And then failing is, I think, something that really goes to the heart. And I guess preparing for the London Games, I really caught up in all the what ifs and all their possible results. And I was already I didn't even compete, and I had already lost, because I lost the joy in what I was doing and was so focused on the outcome that I didn't enjoy the journey. And I guess looking back now, I wish I would have taken everything a little bit more lighthearted and didn't think the world was going to end if I wasn't going to come home with a medal at that point, because it's really not the point. Because now, after winning 2 gold medals at 2 different games, I realized nothing really actually changes when you win. If you haven't found meaning in what you do before winning, then you won't find it after winning. And so when I moved to the US and teamed up with a new coach, that really brought back that joy and the process and the joy of training and actually finding out why I do what I do, which was the reason I started this in first place. I wanted to find out what my body was capable of. Push myself in training. I wanted to see how far I can take it, how fast I can run, how far I can jump. And not for the reason of proving people wrong or for the reasons of being the best in the world. I mean, of course, it's the essence of sport, of wanting to be the best. And I think it's part of being a good competitor, is having the desire to win. But if you let that take over in everyday life and in training, you lose, even though you might be the best in the world on a piece of paper. But if you haven't found the joy and the contentment in what you do, then it's not worth doing at all. And it was really that detour through moving to the US. And it actually came with a really funny bet, because, I mean, we all know that good decisions are made on wild nights out.
Yeah, obviously.
Obviously. I went to visit a friend in America that I met through the games, and I made a bet with her husband, Roderick, that he promised that if I was to move to America, he would coach me for the gold medal at the next games.
Wow.
And I thought, yeah, deal, let's do it. And I guess when I signed the deal at that point, I didn't take it that serious. But then I started thinking about it after being back in Germany and being back in my job and doing my everyday life. And I was like, that can't be it. I love my job, but I also love the sport, and I still love going to training and then finding out what I'm capable of. And so maybe I need to give this a go. And that's when I quit my job and I sold everything that I owned, and I moved to Oklahoma City with 2 suitcases and a plan to live off my savings for the next 4 years. So it wasn't really a journey that was super easy, but it didn't need to be. I just had that one person that believed in my dream as much as I did. And that's all I ever needed, to full-heartedly believe in myself and fully enjoy the journey, because all of a sudden I felt like we were on the same side. I had a person next to me that was on the same side as I was. He wanted to push limits. He wanted to find out how far I can jump. And although it started with a bet of winning a gold medal, it was really never about that medal at all. I think it was for the first time I actually had someone that believed in me so hard. And I think that was a new and something that felt so overwhelming in a positive way. And I think that's what made me the competitor that I am still today.
How important is having that person to believe in you? It's one thing to kind of have that gut feel that you are capable of something, but then to have someone external to you reveal that they think that you're capable of so much more than what you've shown. How did that just allow you to dig in, I guess, and do the work that you needed to do?
I guess it's almost giving you the validation in your dream. And as much as like our life is about ourselves, right? About our own dreams and goals. Like I think now being 33 years old, I realized that anything doing is never worth doing yourself. Like you can't do it by yourself. And also, even if you did, it's not worth doing because then you have no one to celebrate with.
That's so interesting as you're an individual athlete. It's interesting that you have that perspective as well.
It really is because, yes, I'm the one competing on the day, but there's a whole crowd of people behind, whether that's my husband or my coach, my physios, and there's so many people behind the scenes making it possible. But not only making it possible, but also enjoyable. I mean, even on a day-to-day basis, like I just celebrate like PBs in the gym with my strength and conditioning coach. I love going to the track and celebrating with my husband when we did a massive big jump. And it's about these little moments of these little milestones of being able to celebrate how far we come without losing sight of the goal and, you know, the long-term commitments and the long-term achievements. But at the same time, we need to really cherish these moments in between. And that's why we have to have these people around us that believe in us, because they then can celebrate on the same level that we do, because they also invested in this journey and they're as invested as us. And I think that's what makes every journey worth doing, is having these people by our sides every step of the journey, that we can look left and right and all of a sudden, you know, you see a massive smile on their lips because you just did something that was amazing, and you give them as much joy as you give yourself, if not even more. So I guess that's why we need these people. And for me, I didn't need a person that was my best friend. I needed a mentor. And I think for me, it was always a very distinct difference, because my best friend is the person there that, you know, always validates anything that I say. I mean, they're always, you know, backing me. But a mentor is there also to call out my bullshit and also to call me up when I'm not showing up at this session the way that I should be. So Roderick and I, we yelled at each other probably on a weekly basis. We had more fights than we had good moments, but that's what made this journey, shaped it in the way that it ended up being. And so, yeah, a mentor was the one thing that I really needed as an athlete. And I know everyone is very different in their pursuit, and some need those best friends and teammates, but being an individual athlete, I needed that mentor.
I think you're such an incredible and a really unique athlete in that you recognize that it's not about winning gold. Like you recognize that that's not the thing, or breaking world records, of which you've done multiple times. You're obviously going for your third Paralympic gold medal in a row. So you obviously have this like mongrel, I don't know how to describe it without being rude, but like this bitch in you who wants to like get in there and just like win. But you also have the perspective that it's not about that. Like that's not the thing that lights you up. I wonder if you can expand on that and help people understand that, because I just think it's such a beautiful and unique trait to you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It's a very fine line of wanting to be the best and beating the rest of the world, essentially, but at the same time, not getting caught up in the end result. And when I was training in the US and I had put everything on the line to, I guess, go for that medal, I knew that the one thing I have control over is what I do. And I didn't have control over what my competitors are doing. And I didn't have control over certain things. Like, I mean, certain injuries, they're just part of the journey. Things were always going to go not my way in certain aspects, but I always took full charge and full control over the things that I could, and didn't get caught up in the end result, because that was something that I knew was not within my control. And so I think that's where this really good balance comes from, of wanting to be best in the world, because that's the essential part of being a competitor and being an athlete. And I mean, it's not worth watching the sport when everyone is kind of like, okay to not be great. I mean, you know, it's not going to be exciting. I go out on the field and I'm the fiercest competitor. I mean, I believe at that point I'm the best possible athlete, and I know I can win because I've given everything that I can along the journey to be there. And I think when I was in the US and I trained very hard, as we all do, but I also did it with a lot of heart. And I put everything that I felt like my human me, not my athlete me, but my human me, I put that into my athletic journey, and I turned it into my craft, and I turned it into something that I owned. And I took full authorship over my personal journey. I think that's where I showed up in Rio and won my first Paralympic gold medal, because I competed from the heart.
I want to read to you a quote that you have said, and I would love to understand after I read it to you what you want your legacy to be. So what you said was, Paralympic sport is a little bit of a reminder that we sometimes need to focus more on what we have rather than what we are lacking. I really hope that people understand that you don't have to achieve something amazing in order to be perfect the way you are. I really love to encourage people to understand that we aren't our disabilities, but what really defines us is the choices we make, the challenges we take, the way we put ourselves out there and bring whatever abilities that we have individually to the table. Society gets better with how different we are. What are you trying to achieve this year, and what do you want that to look like as a legacy of your life?
When people are going to watch me compete in Paris this year, I really hope that they look at me and they obviously see my very obvious adversity, and I hope that they can see themselves in there. And I know we all have our adversities. They're very personal to us, and some are more visual and obvious to the eye like mine, but we all have them, and we all have our challenges on this earth. But I really hope they can all see their own little stories and realize that they actually have a choice. Like, no matter the circumstance, no matter what happens around us, to us, for us, however you want to say it, we always have a choice to really create the life that we want to. And I think when anyone would have looked at me about 20 years ago, maybe not quite, 18 years ago, that 15-year-old kid that had no legs, they would have never guessed that I was going to show up and do 4 Paralympic Games competing for medals and jumping 5.5 meters along the way. I think
Incredible.
First and foremost would have seen the adversity and the challenges. So that's a legacy I want to leave behind. I want people to see us compete there and see their own imperfect lives and see that they all have a choice to create something really amazing. And it doesn't have to be gold medals. It doesn't have to be, be on a TV screen or even do something anyone else notices. It can just simply be pursue something that's close to your heart and manage all the expectations that we have along the way in a way that we get the most joy possible out of it. And then come out the other side with however we want to express ourselves and share this journey with the world. So I want to leave a legacy behind where everyone is willing to pursue something close to their hearts and really find a way to share it with the world, however that looks like for yourself. But for me, it looks like sharing my journey through sport. And I feel Paralympics has such a great power in that space because you can see our adversities, but at the same time, you can see our choices that we make. And you see not what happens in between and all the difficult years and all the challenges that we had, but you can see that, there is a distinct direction that we can go down to. And above all, I really hope that you watch us and don't just see the adversity, but you actually see, what we can all do if we just keep on trying, pick one thing every day, chip away on it. And all of a sudden, 10, 15 years down the track, you look back and it's like, how far I've come. Like, that's amazing. So yeah, just pick something that you love doing and chip away on it.
I think for me, my favorite thing about talking to Vanessa about her experiences in life is just the perspective that she's gained through all of the incredible changes that she's been through. And I think in life we all experience change, whether, it's a choice that we've made or something that is thrust upon us. And the way that she's been able to navigate that and see it as not something negative, but as something to take on and tackle and move with is something that is so empowering, and I think that we can all learn from because, life throws so much at us every single day, and we can choose to allow it to shift us and change us in ways that create a human that we couldn't even imagine before. So I hope you loved the conversation with Vanessa as much as I did. This episode of No Filter was produced by Courtney Ammenhauser. The executive producer of No Filter is Kimberly Bradish. Mia Friedman will be back in your ears on Monday, and you'll also hear me next week too. I'm Libby Trickett. Thank you so much for listening. Because you've made it to the end, I'm going to tease you a little bit with our next guest. She's a Matilda. That's all. Thank you. Bye.